Hello, this is my last Derby video of the week, most likely. I wanted to do an exercise where I try to figure out which horses were pace compromised by using BRIS past performances and using their numbers. In other words, how do you use their numbers to figure out which horses were pace compromised? And we're specifically going to look at Churchill Downs Race 3 on the Kentucky Derby Undercard. And first we're going to look at Chunk of Gold, though, in the Kentucky Derby, because he has two examples of being pace compromised, both from a slow pace standpoint and a fast pace standpoint. And we're going to look at him first. So how do you use BRIS numbers to know that Chunk of Gold was pace compromised in the Leonardo Stakes? We've looked at this before, and he was compromised by a slow pace in that race. And the first thing you want to do is look at 1C and 2C. It's right next to the pace figures, right to the left of the speed figures. And you see the -8 and the -6 in those two columns. That signals a slow pace because the pace was below par. And you see the fractions 24, 50, 115. I mean, you don't even need to look at 1C and 2C to know those are slow fractions for 1 mile. But again, this is an exercise to figure out how to use the BRIS numbers to figure out if a horse was pace compromised. So that's why I wanted to point out the 1C and the 2C first, the -8 and the -6, and then I pointed out the fractions. And then you want to see where the horse was in proximity to the leaders. And you see this horse was 5.5 lengths off the leader at 1C, and 6 3/4 of a length off the leader at 2C, or the half mile. And so he was pace compromised. He was coming at the end, but he ran out of time, and Baby Max had the benefit of a slow pace. So he was pace compromised, and then he went into the Risen Star at 43-1. And if you thought his Leonardo Stakes was a good race, and you put him underneath magnitude in the Risen Star, you got paid well because he was 43-1. So that's an example of how to use the BRIS numbers if a horse was pace compromised from a slow pace situation. Oh, and I forgot, also check out the late pace rating, or the LP, and you see that Chunk of Gold had a 102 for his LP in the Leonardo Stakes, so he was coming fast at the end, and he was just compromised by the pace. Now let's take a look at Churchill Downs Race 3. This is Churchill Downs Race 3 on the Kentucky Derby Undercard. Valentinian has an incredible pedigree, into mischief over Rachel's Valentina, that makes this colt a grandson of Rachel Alexandra, the legendary Rachel Alexandra. And you see that he was pace compromised on April 9. You see the -9 and the -9 under 1C and 2C. Now let's check out the fractions. You see the 48.5 for the half mile of the mile 1/16th race. I would say that's a slow pace. Maybe not the 23, but the 48 sounds slow. And you see that he was coming at the end. He had a 101 for his LP. And you can see from the running line that he was coming at the end. He was 4 lengths off the leader in mid-stretch. And then at the end, he was a length and 1/4 off the leader. So he was pace compromised. And what I like to see is that a horse is trying to catch a loose leader who had the race all in his hands. And we're going to check the chart really quick. You see here, Skateaway was controlling the race from the beginning. He had a length cushion in the first quarter, in the second quarter, or the half mile actually. And he was going to run away with the lead, but he was almost caught at the end by another horse named Line of Justice. And you see Valentinian in third. He had to come all the way from 7th to finish third in that race, and he only lost by about a length. So he was pace compromised in that race. Skateaway had everything his own way. He was controlling the race, and he had that 48 half mile. And I pointed out the 1C and 2C that was -9 and -9, so he's well below par. And Valentinian was coming at the end with his 101 late pace figure, and the pace was just too slow for him. And again, I love his pedigree, but that's not why I pointed him out. I wanted to point him out because of that -9 and the -9 under 1C and 2C. So now let's take a look at a fast-paced situation. How do you find a fast-paced situation using BRIS numbers? Let's go back to Chunk of Gold. We're back to Chunk of Gold because he was showing more speed in the Louisiana Derby. You see under 1C and 2C the +19, +23, and then you look at the fractions, 46 and change for the half mile. That might not seem fast, but for a mile and 3/16, that is a fast fraction. And you see the pace figures. You see Chunk of Gold ran a 106 for his E1 and a 118 for his E2. Those are early pace figures. And so he was really motoring in the first half of this race, and he was only 2.5 lengths off the leader at 1C and 2 lengths off the leader at 2C. And then he made that move on the far turn, and he only lost by 2 lengths at the end, 2 1/4 of a length, to Tistastic, who was several lengths more behind the leader at 1C. And so I thought Chunk of Gold ran a great race in that race, and he was pace compromised, as you can tell from the plus 19, the plus 23, the 106, 118, the fractions, and he was close to the leaders. Now we're looking at Yinzer, and we're looking at the Louisiana Derby again, because he was right there trying to pressure John Hancock through the early stages. And again, the plus 19, the plus 23 for 1C and 2C, the half-mile fraction, 46, and you see the pace figures. He ran a 110 for E1 and a 119 for E2, so he was motoring as well, and he had no stamina at all. After trying to pressure John Hancock, Yinzer basically completely quit, and he was 23 lengths behind the leader in mid-stretch, and then 51 lengths behind at the end. And so cutting back is a good thing for this colt. This is a mile and 1/16 race. It's an optional claimer, and he'll benefit from cutting back from a mile and 3/16. And you see he broke his maiden at a mile and 1/16 back at Fairgrounds on February 15. So if I had to choose between Yinzer and Valentinian, or what was his name? Valentinian. I want Valentinian to win as a fan, but I don't see a lot of pace in this race. When I go through these horses, even though Bracket Buster set the pace in the Lexington Stakes, he isn't that fast. And there are 2 Baffert horses in this race, but oddly, none of them are speed horses. Goal Oriented was a closer in his maiden win, although that might change going in a route race. And there's also Tiz Secure, who was a stalker in both of his races, even in a route race on turf. And so I don't see a lot of speed in this race. And the fact that Yinzer was pace compromised in the Louisiana Derby from a speed standpoint, and now he's cutting back in distance, he's going to be able to use his speed more effectively here. And there isn't a lot of pressure on paper, although that can change. I guess I would favor Yinzer at 12-1, and maybe he could get a nice pace setup for his speedy style, and maybe he could hold on at the end. So those are my thoughts on Churchill Downs Race 3. This is more of an exercise, though, to use the BRIS numbers to figure out which horses were pace compromised. But I do like Yinzer in this race. Thanks for listening to my analysis, I guess, of Churchill Downs Race 3, and my thoughts on how to use BRIS numbers to figure out if a horse was pace compromised or not. That's the more important part, because you can use this example for any race. So I'll be back soon, maybe, and maybe after the Kentucky Derby, I'll do a post-analysis of the race, and then we'll go from there.